The watertight door groans, a 17-ton slab of steel closing with horrifying finality. There's a scream, cut short, a sickening crunch, and then a profound silence that settled into the iron gut of the ship and never truly left. Miles away on a beautiful bridge, arching over a dry riverbed, a driver slams on his brakes. A woman in a long flowing dress was right there, standing on the ledge. But now, there's nothing, just the wind, and a whisper that feels like a push. These aren't scenes from a movie. These are moments, frozen in time, across Southern California. In the land of sunshine and stardom, there are places that have become permanent scars. Places where the weight of what happened is so heavy, it breaks through the veil. These are locations where the past isn't just remembered, it's repeated, night after terrifying night. Every city has its ghosts, but California, its ghosts are different. They are the specters of broken dreams, of violent ambition, of final desperate acts. They linger in the Golden Age hotels. They walk the blood-soaked canyon trails. They cry out from the crumbling wards of abandoned hospitals where suffering was a currency. We're not just telling ghost stories. We are peeling back the postcard image of Southern California to expose the darkness underneath. We will examine the historical records, the police reports, and the bone-chilling first-hand accounts from people who ventured into these places and came back changed. This is a countdown of the 15 most haunted locations in Southern California. These are the legends, the tragedies, and the terrifying encounters that have made these places infamous. Our journey into the abyss begins now. Haunted place number 15, the Julian Hotel, Julian, California. In a quiet mountain town, a historic hotel holds the ghost of a man who died by a rope, and his anger has never faded. Deep in the Cuyamaca Mountains, nestled between oak trees and old gold mines, lies the town of Julian. People go there for the apple pie, for the crisp mountain air, for a step back in time. It feels quaint, safe. But in the heart of this idyllic town, on Main Street, stands a monument to a past that refuses to be forgotten. A beautiful Victorian building, the Julian Hotel. And inside its walls, a story that ended at the end of a rope continues to be told by the ghost of a man who was never given a voice in life. The hotel was founded in 1897 by Albert and Margaret Robinson, a pioneering couple, and something of a miracle for their time. They were freed slaves who had built a life and a legacy from nothing. They created a sanctuary, a place of warmth and Victorian elegance. But the newfound promise of this town, and the sanctuary they built, would be shattered by the ugliest kind of frontier justice. The story centers on a man named George Williams, a black man working in town, some say as a cook, others as a stable hand. One day, he was accused of killing a white man. The details are lost to the fog of history, muddled by rumor and prejudice. There was no trial, no jury. There was only an accusation and a mob. They dragged him from the hotel, or a nearby building, to a massive oak tree right on Main Street. And there, under its sprawling branches, they hanged him. They say he maintained his innocence until his last, choked breath. And now, you walk into the hotel today. You feel the history in the creak of the floorboards under your feet. You see the antique furniture, the ornate wallpaper, and you feel something else. You feel eyes on you when no one is there. You feel a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature in the narrow hallways, a cold that has nothing to do with the mountain weather and everything to do with a lingering sorrow. Staff and guests whisper about room 10 and room 11. These are the epicenters of the haunting. People who stay in these rooms tell stories that will keep you awake for a week. Imagine it's 3 in the morning, you're sound asleep, and you feel a tug, a firm, deliberate pull on your bed sheets, yanking them down toward your feet. You sit bolt upright, heart pounding in your chest, and scan the pitch-black room. You are absolutely alone. Other guests have been woken up by the sound of a man's voice, whispering unintelligibly from a corner of the room. The most common report, the doorknob. The heavy brass knob on the door to room 10 will begin to jiggle, slowly at first, then violently, as if someone is desperately trying to get in or out. More than one terrified guest has leaped out of bed, flung the door open, only to find the hallway completely, utterly empty and silent. Paranormal investigators who have spent the night here have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. They ask into the darkness, "George, are you here?" And later, when they play back the recording, they hear a faint, staticky whisper on the tape, a single mournful word, "innocent." So what is it that remains? Is it the restless anger of a man who was murdered by a mob? A spirit lashing out at anyone who dares to find comfort in the town that betrayed him? Or is it something sadder? Is it the spirit of a man still chained to the place of his greatest trauma, forever trying to clear his name, forever trying to tell the story that no one would listen to while he was alive? When you feel that cold spot in the hallway, when you hear that doorknob rattle in the dead of night, you have to wonder, are you just a guest in a historic hotel, or have you become the jury in a trial that has been in session for over a century? Haunted place. Number 14. Greystone Mansion, Beverly Hills, California. In Beverly Hills, money doesn't just talk, it builds monuments. Sprawling estates hidden behind iron gates, fortresses of wealth and power. But there is one mansion, a Gothic stone behemoth, that stands apart. It was built as a testament to an oil dynasty, a palace meant to house a legacy. Instead, because behind the gates of this Beverly Hills palace, a bloody violent event from 1929 is said to be trapped in the stone, a ghostly drama that plays out over and over and over again. This is Greystone, a 55-room Tudor-style mansion that oil tycoon Edward L. Doheny, one of the richest men in America, built for his only son Ned. It cost over $3 million in 1928, the most expensive home built in California at the time. It was a father's gift, a symbol that the Doheny family had conquered the world. Ned, his wife Lucy, and their 5 children moved in. For 5 months, they lived the American dream in its most extravagant form, and then on the night of February 16, 1929, that dream came to a sudden bloody end. When you walk through Greystone today, the opulence is staggering, the silence is deafening, your footsteps echo on the black and white checkerboard marble of the Grand Hall. The sunlight struggles to pierce the thick, leaded glass windows, leaving the cavernous rooms in a perpetual state of twilight. As you walk the long, lonely corridors, a profound and heavy sadness seems to seep from the walls themselves. It's a feeling of tragedy, a sense of something terribly unresolved, and nowhere is that feeling more concentrated than in the east wing of the first floor. Down a quiet hallway lies a single guest bedroom, the room where 2 men died. The official story is neat, tidy. The police report states that Ned Doheny's longtime friend and secretary, a man named Hugh Plunkett, was financially troubled and mentally distraught. They say he walked into the guest room, shot Ned Doheny with a .45 caliber pistol, and then turned the gun on himself. A classic murder-suicide, case closed, but the story began to unravel almost immediately. Why was the family doctor called to the scene a full hour before the police were notified? Why did some early accounts describe Doheny's body being found in the hallway as if he were trying to escape, while Plunkett's body was in the bedroom? And then there is the dark, looming shadow of the Teapot Dome scandal, the biggest political corruption case of its era. Both Ned and Hugh had been key witnesses, deeply entangled in the bribery investigation that threatened to bring down the most powerful men in the country. The rumor on the street was simple: Hugh Plunkett knew too much. He was going to talk, and someone had to silence both men forever. And so the house holds the secret, and it does not hold it quietly. Today, Greystone is a popular filming location, but crews who work there tell strange stories. Heavy lighting equipment is moved when no one is near. Brand new camera batteries drain in an instant, but only when filming near that infamous guest room. The staff who maintain the mansion have even more chilling tales. Security guards on the lonely night watch have heard it all. The sound of a frantic, heated argument, 2 male voices, muffled by a heavy wooden door. Then, a single terrifying bang that echoes through the empty mansion. They will rush to the source, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, only to find the room empty, cold, and silent. Others have reported seeing a weeping woman in grey, believed to be the ghost of Lucy Doheny, eternally mourning her husband. But the most disturbing phenomena are the smells, the phantom scent of rich cigar smoke, Ned's favorite kind, drifting from his old study, and in the guest room where he died, the distinct coppery, metallic scent of blood. It comes and goes without warning, a phantom odor that serves as a gut-wrenching reminder of the violence that took place right on that spot. What are these spirits trying to say? are Ned Doheny and Hugh Plunkett, locked in an eternal replay of their final violent moments, a residual haunting, a psychic scar left on the property? Or is something else going on? Is this an intelligent haunting, a desperate ongoing attempt by one or both men to show the world what really happened that night? To point the finger at the real killer who walked away free? The slamming doors, the whispering arguments, the ghostly reenactments, they are the only testimony left. And in the dead silence of Greystone Mansion, if you listen close enough, you can still hear it. Haunted Place Number 13, Battery Osgood Farley, San Pedro, California. Beneath a peaceful coastal park lies a concrete labyrinth from which soldiers' voices still echo, and you are not welcome. High on the cliffs of San Pedro, overlooking the glittering Pacific, sits Angel's Gate Park. Families fly kites, tourists take pictures of the majestic Korean bell of friendship. It is a place of serene beauty, with a breeze that smells of salt and sage. But right under the manicured lawns, buried in the earth, is a place that knows nothing of peace. A cold, dark tomb of military might, a concrete leviathan built for a war that never came. This is Battery Osgood Farley, the forgotten heart of Fort MacArthur, and the soldiers who were stationed here may have never truly been decommissioned. It was built in the early 20th century, a key coastal defense armed with colossal 14-inch guns on disappearing carriages. These weapons were miracles of engineering, designed to rise from their concrete pits, fire a shell weighing over 1,500 pounds at an enemy ship miles out at sea, and then sink back into the earth, invisible. This was the guardian of Los Angeles Harbor, a silent waiting beast of steel and concrete. Through World War I and the heightened paranoia of World War II, soldiers lived and breathed in these tunnels, in a constant state of readiness, a state of perpetual tension. Then, the wars ended, the guns were declared obsolete, the technology was abandoned, the entrances were sealed, and the fortress was left to rot in the darkness beneath the park. But to enter it today, to slip past the rusted bars into its suffocating blackness, is to realize that something was left behind. The moment you step inside, the world changes. The warm California sun vanishes. The temperature plummets. The air becomes heavy, stale, thick with the smell of damp concrete and decay. The only sound is the rhythmic, maddening drip, drip, drip of water seeping through the century-old walls, echoing down corridors that twist into a disorienting maze. Your flashlight beam cuts a lonely path through the oppressive dark, revealing decades of graffiti layered like geologic strata, modern screams painted over the silent history of the place. This is where the stories begin. Urban explorers, drawn to the decay, come back with tales that defy explanation. They speak of shadow figures. You'll be walking down a long passage, your light fixed ahead, and you'll see it at the edge of the beam. A man-shaped silhouette, darker than the darkness itself, standing perfectly still at the far end of the hall. You freeze. Your heart hammers against your ribs. It's not a trick of the light. It has depth, a head, shoulders, and then it doesn't run. It doesn't fade. It simply takes one step back and vanishes into a solid concrete wall. The voices are even worse. One paranormal investigation team left a digital recorder running in an empty chamber. When they played it back hours later, amongst the silence and the dripping water, they heard a clear, cold, menacing whisper, right next to the microphone. 3 distinct words in a man's voice: "Get out, now." The most common report, the one that drives people out into the daylight, shaking and refusing to return, is the feeling of being watched. It's a tangible presence, an unseen sentinel tracking your every move through the darkness, its gaze a physical weight on the back of your neck. It feels like you are trespassing. It feels like you are the enemy. Is this just the natural paranoia that comes from being in a dark, claustrophobic, man-made tomb, a place designed for war and tension? Or has the collective emotion of hundreds of young soldiers, their fear, their discipline, their constant readiness for violence, been absorbed by these concrete walls, creating a permanent echo of a soldier who doesn't know the war is over? A guardian spirit who still stands his post, protecting this empty fortress from all intruders. He is a ghost from a bygone war, a sentinel in the dark, and he wants you to know you are not welcome here. The cold concrete of the battery is a uniquely human horror, a monument to our own fear. But there are older fears, deeper fears, fears that were here long before any forts were built. To find our next location, we must leave the coast, leave the city's edge, and drive inland. We travel towards the mountains, to a place where the manicured lawns and paved roads give way to raw, untamed nature, We're going to a canyon, a place with a name that tastes like blood and earth, a wound in the landscape where centuries of violence have accumulated, creating something utterly hostile. A place where you are not just an observer of the paranormal, you are the prey. Haunted place number 12, Black Star Canyon, Orange County, California. There is a canyon in Orange County where the ground is soaked in blood, and at night, the spirits of the massacred are said to hunt the living. This is not a place you stumble upon. You have to seek it out. It hides in the rugged folds of the Santa Ana Mountains, a deep and twisting scar in the earth. By day, it can almost seem beautiful, but as the sun begins to set, a change occurs. The light fails faster here. The shadows grow long and predatory, and the very air you breathe begins to feel ancient, heavy, and deeply, deeply hostile. Black Star Canyon is more than just a place of extreme paranormal activity. It is a place of very real danger, a place that seems to actively despise visitors. It is a place that many people enter, but far fewer are willing to ever speak about again. The trail starts wide and easy, but the deeper you go, the more the canyon closes in around you. The trees, live oaks, gnarled into monstrous shapes, form a dense canopy overhead, blocking out the sky. The cheerful sounds of birds and insects fade into an unnerving, expectant silence. It's a silence that feels like you're being watched. A silence that says you've just walked into a trap. This is where the canyon's dark history begins to press in. That history is written in layers of violence. The first and deepest wound was inflicted in 1831. A posse of American fur trappers, accusing a local village of the Tongva tribe of stealing their horses, chased them into this canyon. There was no escape. The trappers descended upon the villagers, slaughtering men, women and children in a brutal massacre. They say the creek ran red that day, the ground absorbed the bloodshed, and the canyon itself has never forgotten. But that was only the beginning. The decades that followed brought more death, murders, shootouts, rumors of KKK, cross burnings at a hidden ranch deep within its walls. In the 1970s, it gained a new reputation as a haven for dark occult rituals, with tales of animal sacrifice echoing through the hills. It's as if the initial violence created a beacon, attracting more darkness, more pain, more death, until the entire canyon was saturated with it. And tonight, you can feel it all. Hikers who have dared to stay after dark come back with stories that are terrifyingly consistent. It often starts with the sounds, a blood-curdling scream that seems to erupt from all directions at once, so loud it vibrates in your bones. Then there are the footsteps. You'll be walking the trail, the crunch of your own feet, the only sound when you hear it. Another set of steps right behind you, heavy, deliberate. You stop. The footsteps stop. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. Every instinct screams at you to turn around, but a deeper, more primal instinct screams louder. Because you know, with a certainty that defies logic, that if you turn, there will be nothing there. Others have seen them. A paranormal group, armed with cameras and recorders, reported seeing pale humanoid figures standing motionless on the ridges above them, unnaturally tall and thin, just watching them with a silent, unnerving intensity. They felt like they were being sized up, like they were prey. They fled, and later reported that as they ran, they could hear what sounded like guttural, inhuman growls coming from the brush all around them. The evidence captured here is fleeting and chaotic. Shaky video clips where a dark shape seems to flit between trees. Audio recorders that pick up whispers in languages that are long dead. Or the piercing shriek of a woman in agony. But the most compelling evidence is the sheer number of people who abandon their cars, their camping gear, everything, and run out of the canyon on foot, wild-eyed with a terror they can't articulate. This is what makes Black Star Canyon so uniquely horrifying. It's not just a haunted place, it's a primal landscape that feels actively malevolent. Are the spirits of the massacred Tonga still crying out in pain? Are the ghosts of murder victims replaying their final moment? Or has a century and a half of concentrated violence and hatred birthed something else entirely? A singular, dark consciousness that resides in the canyon itself, a territorial predator that views every human footstep as an invasion. When you enter Black Star Canyon, the rules of the civilized world fall away, and you are no longer at the top of the food chain. The terror of the wild is a primal thing, the fear of being hunted in a place where nature itself is the enemy. But what happens when the horror follows us back into the city? What happens when we are the invaders? Our next location takes us out of the untamed wilderness and into the heart of a bustling historic district. It's a place where the dead are supposed to be at peace, resting beneath consecrated ground. But progress and the arrogance of man decided their peace wasn't a priority. They built a road right over their graves, and now the dead are angry. They are very, very angry, and they are not shy about showing it. Haunted place number 11. El Campo Santo Cemetery, San Diego. There is an unwritten rule, a sacred pact between the living and the dead. Let them rest in peace. But what happens when that pact is broken? What happens when progress and profit are deemed more important than consecrated ground? You get a place like El Campo Santo, a cemetery where the dead do not rest, because the living won't let them, and now they are fighting back. In the heart of Old Town San Diego, amidst the lively mariachi music and the smell of fresh tortillas, sits a small, walled cemetery. It looks peaceful, historic, but what you see is a lie. The walls are not the true boundary. The real cemetery spills out, invisibly, under the busy street, under the sidewalks where tourists walk, under the shops that sell souvenirs. The dead are not confined to their headstones. They are everywhere, and they are furious. El Campo Santo was established in 1849, the final resting place for the founding families of San Diego, for powerful dons and their wives, for pioneers, and for outlaws. It was a holy place, but by the late 1880s, the city was booming. It needed more space, and with a shocking callousness, the city planners simply ran a horse-drawn streetcar line, and then a main road, San Diego Avenue, right through the middle of the graveyard. They paved over the dead without a second thought, trapping hundreds of souls beneath a river of asphalt and commerce. One of the men buried here is James Yankee Jim Robinson, the infamous thief, whose ghost is said to terrorize the Whaley House just down the street. His soul may haunt the place of his execution, but his physical remains are here, under this desecrated ground, a nexus of spiritual anger that radiates through Old Town. And that anger, it manifests in the most unsettling ways. It targets the very symbols of the modern world that displace them. Tourists and locals will park their cars along San Diego Avenue, only to have their alarms begin screaming for no reason, not just once, again and again, as if an unseen hand is relentlessly pressing the panic button. Engines, running perfectly just moments before, will suddenly die, refusing to restart until the car is pushed off that specific patch of road. Headlights flicker, radios switch stations on their own. It's a technological haunting, the 19th century dead waging a guerrilla war against the 21st century machines that roll over their bodies day and night. But it's not just the cars, it's what people see. Late at night when the crowds thin out, you might see a man in dark Victorian clothing, walking slowly across the street, his form so solid you'd swear he was a historical reenactor. But then a car will approach and pass right through him as he vanishes into thin air. Ghostly women in elegant Spanish dresses have been seen floating above the sidewalk, their faces etched with sorrow. Tour guides tell of seeing the glowing eyes of a spectral horse, still pulling a phantom streetcar down its long-forgotten track. In recent years, the city has tried to make amends, embedding small bronze markers into the sidewalk and street to indicate the location of the graves they paved over. But this gesture has only seemed to make things worse. It's as if pointing out the desecration has only re-energized the spirits, reminding them of the disrespect they've been shown. Paranormal investigators flock here, capturing EVPs of angry whispers in Spanish and English. Amidst the traffic noise, they document sudden drastic temperature drops in the middle of the warm street, cold spots that feel like stepping through a doorway into a tomb. El Campo Santo is a chilling lesson in what happens when the dead are disturbed. These are not sad, residual haunt. This is an active, intelligent, and retaliatory haunting. The spirits here are not content to simply wander. They interact, they interfere, they make their presence and their anger known to anyone who dares to walk or drive over their final unhallowed resting place. They are a spectral protest, a chorus of the wronged dead, screaming a single unified message through the ages. You are on our graves, and you are not welcome. The rage of the disrespected dead is a potent force, a righteous anger, born from a broken promise. But there is another kind of haunting, one born not from disrespect, but from pure, unadulterated hatred, a horror that erupts from a single cataclysmic event of such brutal violence that it tears a permanent hole in the fabric of reality. Our next location takes us to the historic heart of Los Angeles, to a grand old hotel, a place that for one terrifying night in 1871 became a slaughterhouse, and the ghosts of the victims are still there, trapped in the terror of their final moment. Haunted place number 10. The Pico House, Los Angeles. It was built to be the jewel of Los Angeles, a grand hotel signifying the city's ascendancy, a place of Italianate architecture, gaslit chandeliers, and immense promise. But on one horrific night in 1871, its ornate balconies and grand windows became a front row seat to a massacre, and now the building itself seems unable to forget what it was forced to witness. The victims are gone, but their screams are not. Today the Pico House stands as a silent monument in the El Pueblo de Los Angeles historical district. Its doors are often locked, its grand lobby empty. To stand before it is to feel the immense weight of its past, but to know its story is to understand the chill that seems to emanate from its brick facade. Because this building stands adjacent to the ground where one of the worst mass lynchings in American history took place, and the upper floors remember everything. The date was October 24th. Tensions between the city's white residents and its small marginalized Chinese community had reached a boiling point. A gunfight between rival Chinese tongs provided the spot. A mob, 500 strong, descended upon the city's original Chinatown, a narrow, dangerous alley, right next to the Pico House. What followed was hours of unrestrained, racist savagery. The mob hunted down any Chinese person they could find. They were shot, stabbed, and beaten. At least 18 men and boys were dragged to makeshift gallows and hanged, all while the city's most luxurious hotel watched. Now walk through those halls in your mind. The air is thick, still, and heavy with more than just. Staff who maintain the building will not go to the upper floors alone, and for good reason. They are the ones who hear it. The sound of running, not a playful jog, but the frantic, panicked footsteps of men running for their lives, down the long, empty corridors. Then come the cry, faint at first, then growing louder. Agonized moans, desperate pleas for help that echo from rooms that have been vacant for generations. Maintenance workers have reported the most terrifying phenomena. One man, working late, felt an inexplicable, paralyzing cold wash over him. He looked up toward the attic rafters, and for a split second, saw the clear, unmistakable silhouette of a man hanging from a rope, twisting slowly in a non-existent breeze. He blinked, and it was gone, but the image, the feeling of absolute despair never left him. Others have seen faces, looking out of the darkened upper-story windows from the street below, pale, gaunt faces that vanish the moment they are seen. This isn't a haunting that plays by any rules. It is raw psychic trauma, endlessly replaying itself. Paranormal investigators consider the Pico House to be a site of a massive residual haunting,
A psychic recording of a horrific event burned into the very fabric of the building. The EVPs they capture here are not conversational. They are bursts of pure emotion. The sounds of weeping, shouts of terror, the splintering of wood as doors are kicked in. It is a symphony of chaos and fear. The emotional toll is so immense that investigators often report feeling physically sick, overwhelmed by a wave of sorrow and hopelessness, so powerful it can bring a grown man to his knees. The Pico House is more than just a haunted hotel. It is a memorial to a historical atrocity. Its ghosts a testament to a dark chapter many would prefer to forget. The spirits here aren't trying to scare you. They aren't trying to communicate. They are simply trapped. They are forever running from the mob, forever crying out for a help that never came, forever dying in the shadow of the grandest hotel in Los Angeles. And if you stand outside on a quiet night and look up at those dark, empty windows, you have to wonder if a place that has witnessed such profound hatred can ever truly be silent again. The echoes of a massacre are a brutal kind of haunting, a psychic wound left by historical violence. But not all ghosts are born from such public displays of hatred. Some are born from a quieter, more personal kind of death, the death of a dream. Our next destination takes us into the very heart of fantasy itself, Hollywood. We're going to a legendary hotel, a place where the brightest stars in the world came to shine. But for some, the glamour faded. The light went out and their spirits became permanently trapped in the gilded cage, where they were once adored.
Haunted place. Number 9. The Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Hollywood. In Hollywood, your image can make you immortal, but for some, in the most literal and terrifying way, it can also trap your soul. On a star-lined stretch of Hollywood Boulevard stands a palace of golden age glamour, a monument to the dream factory, the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. This was where the stars were born, where the first Oscars were held, where the most famous people on Earth came to celebrate their success. But for a few of its most iconic residents, the celebration never ended. They checked in decades ago, and they have never, ever checked out. To step into the lobby of the Roosevelt is to step back in time. The soaring Spanish colonial architecture, the leather armchairs, the opulent chandeliers, it all hums with the energy of a bygone era. You can almost hear the clinking of champagne glasses, the murmur of powerful producers making deals, the laughter of starlets. But linger long enough, especially when the night grows quiet and you begin to feel something else. A profound melancholy, a loneliness that feels as luxurious and cavernous as the hotel itself. It's the feeling that you are not alone, and that the famous faces in the old photographs on the walls are not just looking at you, they are looking for you. Our first spirit is perhaps the most famous ghost in the world. Before she was a global icon, Norma Jean Baker was a young model, trying make it big. She lived at the Roosevelt for 2 years. This is where her career began. This is where she became Marilyn Monroe. One of her favorite spots was a large, full-length mirror that hung in her poolside suite. After her death, that mirror was moved, and that's when she started appearing. Staff would be walking down a hallway, glance at the mirror, and freeze. It wasn't their reflection they saw. It was her, the unmistakable image of Marilyn Monroe, fixing her lipstick, adjusting her famous blonde hair, looking back at them with those sad, beautiful eyes. A fleeting, impossible vision, a ghost trapped, not in a room, but in her own reflection. But Marilyn's lonely spirit is not the most active ghost in the hotel. For that you have to go up to the 9th floor. This was the temporary home of one of the most brilliant and tragic actors of his generation, Montgomery Clift. He stayed in room 928 for 3 months, while filming the classic From Here to Eternity. He was known to pace the halls relentlessly, bugle in hand, practicing his lines and his trumpet calls for the role. Years later, a horrific car accident shattered his face and sent his life into a downward spiral of pain. addiction and despair, but his ghost, it seems, remains on the 9th floor, forever rehearsing the role that made him a star. Guests staying in or near room 928 report experiences that are deeply unsettling. They are jolted awake in the dead of night by the mournful, distant sound of a bugle playing. They feel an unseen presence in the room with them, a nervous, pacing energy that makes it impossible to relax. Some have felt a distinct, cold hand gently touch their shoulder while they were reading in bed. Security has received calls from the room, only to find it empty, the phone lying off the hook. It is the ghost of a man whose pain was so great in life, it has followed him into death, a phantom perfectionist forever trapped in his work. And they are not alone. There is the ghost of a little girl in a blue dress, named Caroline, who has been seen darting through the lobby, searching for a mother she will never find. There is the spectre of a man in a tuxedo in the Blossom Ballroom, the very room where the first Academy Awards were held. Perhaps an actor who never got his prize. The Hollywood Roosevelt is haunted by a unique kind of sorrow. The ghosts here were not victims of a massacre or a brutal injustice. They are victims of the Hollywood dream itself, the dream that promises eternal youth, eternal beauty, eternal fame, and sometimes delivers eternal damnation. They are spirits bound to the place that made them, the place where they were most alive, and perhaps the place where the seeds of their tragic ends were sown. When you stay at the Roosevelt, you sleep under the same roof as legends. Just remember, some of them might still be walking the hall. The ghosts of the famous are a strange comfort, in a way. Their stories are known, their faces familiar. But what about the ghosts of the forgotten, the nameless, the destitute, the people who died in public institutions, their passing marked only by a number in a dusty ledger? Our next location takes us far from the glamour of Hollywood, to the decaying ruins of a place that housed the city's outcasts, a place where the suffering was so immense and so anonymous that it has curdled into something truly terrifying. We are going to a place of madness and despair, and we are going to cross the Screaming Bridge. Haunted Place, number 8. Rancho Los Amigos, Downey. The ghosts of the famous choose to linger, their legends a gilded cage. But what about the ghosts of the forgotten, the poor, the sick, the mentally ill, the thousands of anonymous souls who lived and died behind the walls of a public institution? Their passing wasn't marked by headlines, but by a line in a ledger. And their spirits don't haunt a single room. They haunt acres of decay. They are an army of the unknown, and this was their final home. In the city of Downey there is a sprawling dead city of sorrow. Today it's known as Rancho Los Amigos, a modern rehabilitation hospital. But we're not talking about the new buildings, we're talking about the South Campus, a vast, abandoned tract of land, littered with the ruins of another time, a time when this place was called, simply, the Los Angeles County Poor Farm. It was an asylum, a hospital for incurable diseases, and a final desperate home for the destitute. It was a repository for every kind of human suffering imaginable, and the suffering never left. To walk the grounds of the abandoned campus is to walk through a landscape of total desolation. The buildings stand like hollowed-out skeletons, windows are shattered like vacant, staring eyes, paint peels from the walls like sunburnt skin, weeds and vines choke the old walkways, nature slowly strangling the memory of the misery that took place here. The silence is profound, broken only by the wind whistling through the empty wall. It is a place that feels utterly and completely hopeless, a place where thousands of people came to die, far from the eyes of the world. The history of this place is a history of pain. Founded in 1888, it was designed to house the people society wanted to forget. The elderly with no family, the disabled with no prospects, the mentally ill with no hope of recovery. For nearly a century it was a city unto itself, filled with thousands of residents living out their final sad day. As medicine evolved, it became a place for those with chronic illnesses, tuberculosis,
polio. The air itself would have been thick with the sound of coughing, of moaning, of quiet weeping. This wasn't a place of healing. It was a place of waiting, waiting for the end. And out of those thousands of tragedies, one story has clawed its way to the surface. A legend so potent it has a name, the Screaming Bridge. The story goes that sometime in the 1930s or 40s, a nurse who worked at the hospital found herself pregnant, the child of a secret affair with a doctor. In an era of unforgiving morality, she was ruined. One night, consumed by despair and madness, she took her newborn baby to a lonely concrete bridge on the property. In the suffocating darkness, she committed an unthinkable act. She threw her child into the dark waters below, and then her mind shattered. She hanged herself from the iron railings, a murder and a suicide born of shame and desperation. That bridge still stands, and urban explorers who dare to visit it at night come back with the same terrifying story. First, you hear the faint, unmistakable sound of a baby crying, a frantic, helpless wail that cuts through the silence, and then another sound joins it, a woman's scream, not a quick shout of fright, but a long drawn-out shriek of pure, undiluted agony and madness. It is a sound, they say, that freezes the blood in your veins, the sound of a mother's soul breaking for all eternity. But the bridge is not the only haunted place here. People who trespass in the abandoned wards report seeing dark, fleeting shapes in their peripheral vision, figures that dart from doorway to doorway. They see faces looking down at them from the empty second-story windows. They hear disembodied whispers in the old hospital corridors. Investigators have captured EVPs, not of coherent sentences, but of the sounds of suffering, coughing, labored breathing, pained moans. It's the sound of 1,000 people dying slowly, all at once. Rancho Los Amigos is a paranormal vortex, charged with the collective energy of countless forgotten souls. The legend of the Screaming Bridge is the story that gets told, but it's just one note in a vast symphony of pain. When you stand on that decaying campus, surrounded by the ruins of so much misery, you realize the truth. Any scream you hear might not be the ghost of that one tragic nurse. It could be the scream of any one of the thousands of spirits trapped here, forever reliving their final lonely moments in the place that the world built to forget them. Haunted place number 7, the Colorado Street Bridge, Pasadena. Some places are haunted by what you see: a fleeting shape in a window, a dark figure at the end of a hall. But the most terrifying places, the ones that get deep under your skin, are haunted by what you feel. They are haunted by an emotion, a suggestion, a dark whisper that plants a seed in your own mind. There is a bridge in Pasadena, a masterpiece of architecture, so beautiful and so deadly, that it has earned a gruesome nickname, Suicide Bridge. And the danger here isn't just seeing a ghost. It's being persuaded to become one. By daylight it's stunning, a grand Beaux-Arts marvel, with majestic arches, striding across the vast Arroyo Seco Canyon. Ornate cast-iron lamp posts line its length, giving it an air of old-world elegance. It was a symbol of progress when it was completed but soon after it opened, people discovered it could be used for another purpose. The first documented suicide was Then came the Great Depression. As fortunes vanished and hope died across the country, this beautiful bridge became a magnet for despair. Dozens upon dozens of souls, seeing no other way out, came here to take their final desperate leap. The official count is over 150, and it is said that many of them never left. To walk the bridge today, especially as dusk settles, is an exercise in unease. The view is breathtaking, but the feeling is heavy. An oppressive sadness seems to cling to the concrete, a sorrow so profound it feels like it's sinking into your own chest. The wind as it whips through the tall curved suicide fence that was installed decades too late doesn't just howl, it seems to whisper, and the further you walk toward the center of the bridge, the more you feel it, a strange magnetic pull toward the edge. This is not just a place of sorrow, it is a place of specters. The most famous is the lady in the flowing gown. For decades, drivers crossing late at night have slammed on their brakes, seeing a ghostly woman in a long white dress, standing on the ledge, ready to jump. They call the police, but by the time anyone arrives, she is gone. Pedestrians have seen her too, a mournful figure walking the length of the bridge, her face a mask of sorrow, only to fade into mist before their very eyes. Another spirit, a man in wire-rimmed spectacles, looking like a ghost from the Depression era, has been seen pacing anxiously, as if forever contemplating the decision that sealed his fate. But seeing a ghost is one thing, being touched by one is something else entirely, and that is the true horror of Suicide Bridge. Countless people have told the same story. They'll be walking the bridge, perhaps feeling a bit down, lost in their own thoughts. They'll pause, looking out over the railing at the canyon floor 150 feet below, and that is when they feel it. It is not a violent shove, it is a gentle, firm, almost persuasive pressure on their back, a psychic nudge, a palpable force urging them, encouraging them to climb over. Some hear a whisper on the wind, a soft voice that says, "It's okay," or "just one more step." It is the bridge's most insidious and terrifying legend, that the lonely souls who jumped are not at peace. They are recruiting. Paranormal investigators have captured chilling EVPs here, disembodied voices, caught on digital recorders, that seem to whisper the word jump or why, or help me. Photographs taken at night are filled with unexplained orbs, and strange misty formations, particularly around the areas where people have jumped. But the most compelling evidence remains the sheer volume of personal testimony. People who have felt that unnatural push, who have heard those whispers, who have been overcome by a sudden, inexplicable wave of suicidal despair that vanishes the moment they step off the bridge. What truly haunts the Colorado Street Bridge? Is it merely a place soaked in so much tragedy that the residual energy of the past overwhelms the senses of the living, or is something far more sinister at play? Are the spirits of the dead actively malicious, so miserable in their eternal fall, that they want to drag others down with them? The bridge is a beautiful, terrible place, a monument to both architectural genius and human desperation, but if you choose to walk it, be on your guard. The most dangerous thing about this bridge isn't its height, it's the possibility that the dark thoughts in your head might not be your own.
Haunted Place Number 6, Mission San Juan Capistrano. Some places are built for prayer. Their walls are raised to hold faith, their gardens to inspire peace, their chapels to offer sanctuary. But what happens when the very ground that sanctuary is built on turns against it? What happens when a house of God becomes a tomb in a matter of seconds? You get a place like Mission San Juan Capistrano, a place of profound beauty and a place of profound eternal sorrow. Known as the Jewel of the Missions, it is a breathtaking landmark of California's Spanish history. To walk its grounds is to be transported. The air is sweet with the scent of citrus blossoms and ancient adobe. Fountains trickle in serene courtyards. The bells, in their iconic wall, the campanario, stand silent against the blue sky. It feels holy. It feels peaceful. But stay until the sun begins to set, when the shadows stretch and pool in the long, arched corridors, and that peace begins to feel fragile. You begin to feel as if you are being watched from the darkened doorways. You see movement in your peripheral vision that vanishes when you turn your head, and you begin to understand that this sacred ground is also haunted ground. The mission's heart of darkness lies in a pile of beautiful, tragic ruins, the remains of the great stone church. At the dawn of the 19th century, it was the most magnificent structure of its kind, a towering cathedral with a 120-foot-tall bell tower. But on the morning of December 8, 1812, disaster struck. It was the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and the church was filled with worshippers, mostly women and children. As the priest raised the host, the ground began to heave. A catastrophic earthquake, one of the most powerful in the state's history, ripped through the valley. The massive stone roof of the church twisted and buckled. The bell tower collapsed, and in less than a minute, the entire structure came crashing down upon the congregation inside. 40 people were crushed to death in an instant, and it is from this single horrific event that the mission's most famous ghost was born. Her name was Magdalena, a young Native American woman, who legend says had fallen in love with a Spanish soldier named Teofil. Their love was forbidden, so they would meet in secret among the mission's gardens. That fateful morning, Magdalena, against the orders of her elders, slipped into the great stone church to light a candle and pray for her love. She was among the 40 who perished, and her spirit, they say, is still there. She is seen as a luminous, ethereal lady in white, drifting silently through the ruins of the church where she died. Visitors see her at twilight, a beautiful, sorrowful spectre, eternally searching the gardens for the soldier she can never again embrace. But she is not the only soul who lingers here. The living mission staff, the priests and workers, speak of another, more intimidating spirit, the faceless monk. He is seen walking the ancient corridors, particularly near the Serra Chapel, the oldest church in all of California. He moves with a silent, determined glide, his face always completely obscured by the deep shadow of his cowl. To see him is to feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. It is the feeling of looking at something that is not meant for modern eyes, and there are others. The ghostly figures of Spanish soldiers, still armed, have been seen patrolling the grounds, forever guarding an empire that has long since crumbled to dust. People have heard the faint phantom ringing of the mission bells, attributed to the spirits of the 2 altar boys who were killed in the bell tower during the earthquake. They've captured EVPs that sound like faint Latin chanting near the chapel, and the soft, heartbroken weeping of a woman near the ruins of the great stone church. The haunting of Mission San Juan Capistrano is not one of anger or malice. It is a haunting of deep, inescapable sadness. It is the story of lives cut short in a moment of holy worship. It is the tragedy of a love that was never meant to be. It is the echo of a time of conquest and faith, a time that still lives and breathes within these adobe walls. When you visit this beautiful sacred place, remember what lies beneath the beauty. You are walking through a graveyard, and the spirits here, they are still waiting for their final prayers to be answered. A hospital is supposed to be a place of healing, a place where pain is eased and life is saved. But what happens when a hospital becomes a place of suffering? When the sheer volume of trauma and death becomes so immense that it soaks into the very foundation, you get a place like Linda Vista, a hospital that for decades sat abandoned in the heart of Los Angeles, a rotting monument to agony, where the ghosts of the patients who died within its walls were the only remaining residents. For nearly 20 years, this building was a holy grail for ghost hunters and a terrifying rite of passage for urban explorers. Though it has since been renovated, to understand its haunting, you have to go back to when it was a tomb. Imagine stepping through a broken window into its decaying halls. The air is thick with the smell of mold, dust, and the faint lingering scent of antiseptic. The ghost of clean paint peels from the walls in long leprous strips. A gurney stained with things you don't want to identify sits silently in the middle of a corridor, its wheels seized by rust and time. Every scattered medical chart, every broken vial, every rusted piece of equipment is a relic of someone's final desperate moments, and you feel it instantly. You are trespassing in a place of profound pain. It began its life in 1904 as the Santa Fe Railroad Hospital, built to treat the men who built the West. These were not minor injuries. They were the victims of horrific industrial accidents, crushed limbs, severe burns, mangled bodies. The death toll was high from the very beginning. As the decades wore on, the neighborhood of Boyle Heights changed,
And so did the patients. The hospital became a frontline for Los Angeles's spiraling gang violence. The beds that once held injured railroad workers now held victims of stabbings and gunshot wounds. The staff was overwhelmed, the quality of care plummeted, and the death rate skyrocketed. This wasn't a place of healing anymore. It was a factory of death. And in 1991, it finally, mercifully closed its doors and was left to rot. But the spirits of the dead did not leave with the living. The stories from its years of abandonment are legendary. Ghost hunting teams who spent the night inside would report violent, terrifying activity. In the surgical wing, they would hear the frantic sound of doctors shouting orders, followed by the long, flat tone of a phantom heart monitor. A small, playful but deeply unsettling spirit of a little girl was said to haunt. Investigators would hear her giggling in the darkness, or capture EVPs of a child humming a nursery rhyme. Others would see her tiny apparition darting down the hall, only to vanish. Then there was the ghost of the angry doctor, a tall, stern figure seen roaming the halls, who seemed infuriated by the presence of intruders in his hospital. People reported being confronted by this apparition, which would glare at them with malevolent eyes before disappearing, leaving behind an unnerving pocket of intense cold. But all of this pales in comparison to the hospital's true heart of darkness. The morgue, located in the basement. The morgue at Linda Vista was a place of supreme terror. To descend the stairs was to feel the weight of every soul that passed through. Investigators would stand in the pitch-black, silent room, surrounded by the empty, refrigerated body lockers, and the activity would begin. A loud clang from inside one of the metal drawers, as if a fist was pounding on it from the other side. The distinct, heavy scrape of a body tray being dragged across the concrete floor, when nothing was there. The most terrifying reports were physical. People were shoved hard by an unseen force. They felt icy, sharp pains, as if being jabbed by a spectral needle. They felt the cold, dead breath of something whispering right in their ear. Linda Vista was a paranormal pressure cooker. The sheer volume of pain, fear, violence, and death that occurred there charged the building with a negative energy so powerful it became a living entity. The building has been scrubbed clean, renovated into senior apartments, but those who know its history have to ask, can you ever truly wash away that much agony? Are the spirits of the gunshot victims, the mangled railroad workers, the angry doctor, and the lonely little girl still walking the halls? Or have they finally found their peace? The new residents may live there now, but the chilling possibility remains that they are not the only tenant. Haunted Place Number 4, Hotel del Coronado, San Diego. It is one of the most beautiful hotels in the world, a sun-drenched seaside palace with iconic red turrets, a place where presidents have slept and Hollywood royalty has played. It is where the dream of Southern California comes true. But in one of its elegant rooms, on the 3rd floor, a guest checked in over 130 years ago, and her beautiful heartbroken spirit has refused to ever check out. To see the Hotel del Coronado for the first time is to be enchanted. It's a masterpiece of wooden Victorian architecture, a sprawling romantic fantasy rising from the white sands of Coronado Beach. The air itself feels different here, lighter, infused with the luxury and history of generations. You walk the long, polished wood corridors, which gently slant and creak with age, and you can feel the echoes of the past. But it's not just history you feel. It's a deep, pervasive, and profoundly romantic sadness that seems to emanate from the very walls of the hotel, a hint that beneath all this beauty lies a tragedy that has never been laid to rest. The story begins on Thanksgiving Day. A beautiful, elegantly dressed young woman arrived at the hotel, alone. She signed the guest register as Lottie A. Bernard from Detroit. She was visibly unwell and seemed deeply distressed. She told the staff she was waiting for her brother, a doctor, who was supposed to meet her there. She was given a room on the 3rd floor, and then she waited. Days passed. The man she was waiting for never arrived. Her solitude and her despair grew. 5 days after she checked in, an employee found her body on an exterior staircase leading down to the beach. She had died from a single gunshot wound to the head. The authorities eventually identified her not as Lottie Bernard, but as Kate Morgan. They pieced together a story of a young woman caught in a troubled marriage, who had run away with a lover. They concluded that, abandoned and heartbroken, she had taken her own life. The case was closed, but there were problems with the story. Big problems. The gun found beside her body was a different caliber from the bullet that had killed her. It was physically impossible for her to have shot herself with that weapon. Was she murdered by the lover who abandoned her? Was someone else involved? The mystery of how Kate Morgan really died has never been solved, and it is perhaps for that reason her spirit cannot find peace. Her former room, now numbered 33T7, is the epicenter of one of the most famous hauntings in America. Guests who stay in the room report a catalog of strange and unnerving phenomena. You might be reading a book, only to have the lights flicker on and off. The television will suddenly turn on by itself, the screen filled with white noise, but some have sworn they saw the faint ghostly image of a woman's face in the static for just a moment. Objects on the desk and dresser are known to move on their own. The windows, though sealed shut, will suddenly feel as if a cool ocean breeze is blowing through them. And then there is the scent, the distinct floral fragrance of a Victorian-era perfume that will suddenly fill the air and then vanish just as quickly. But it's not just objects. Kate herself, her apparition, a graceful figure in a black lace dress, has been seen standing by the window, looking out towards the ocean, as if still waiting for the man who never came. She has been seen in the hallway outside the room, a fleeting, sorrowful specter that disappears around a corner. And in the hotel's gift shop, a book written about her ghost story has a bizarre habit of flying off the shelf, as if an unseen hand has swatted it to the floor. Unlike many of the spirits we've encountered, the ghost of Kate Morgan does not seem malicious. She is a spirit defined by her loneliness and her heartbreak. Her presence is not one of terror, but of an inescapable, chilling melancholy. Is she still waiting for her lover, trapped in a loop of her final desperate days? Or is her restless spirit trying to communicate the truth of her death, to solve the mystery of her own murder? When you walk the beautiful sunlit corridors of the Hotel del Coronado, remember its dark secret, for you are always in the presence of its most famous and most tragic resident, a beautiful stranger, forever trapped in paradise.
Haunted place number 3, the Cecil Hotel, Los Angeles. It's been called Hotel Death, a place where serial killers found shelter and guests check in, but don't always check out. This is the story of America's most evil hotel. In the decaying heart of downtown Los Angeles, on the edge of the desperate extents known as Skid Row, stands a hotel with a history so dark, so blood-soaked, that its very name is a synonym for horror. They've tried to rebrand it, to call it Stay on Main, to give it a coat of fresh paint and a new logo. But you cannot wash away this much blood. You cannot paint over this much misery. The Cecil Hotel is a wound on the city's landscape, a magnet for the darkest aspects of the human condition. And the spirits of the dead are not just ghosts here. They are a part of the building's foundation. When it opened in the 1920s, it was a grand, respectable hotel. But as the decades passed and the neighborhood around it crumbled, the Cecil began to devolve. It became a transient hotel, a place for the desperate, the destitute, and the predatory. To walk its long, narrow hallways, even in photographs, is to feel a sense of profound dread. Stained carpets, flickering lights, and the oppressive feeling that define every one of its 700 doors. A terrible story has unfolded. This is not just a place where people died. This is a place where monsters came to rest. In the mid-1980s, as the city was paralyzed with fear, Richard Ramirez, the satanic serial killer known as the Night Stalker, lived on the 14th floor of the Cecil. He would return from a night of brutal murder, covered in blood, and walk through the lobby, completely unnoticed in the hotel's chaotic and derelict atmosphere. In 1991, another serial killer, the Austrian journalist Jack Unterweger, checked into the Cecil, likely in homage to Ramirez. He proceeded to murder at least 3 local sex workers, using the hotel as his hunting lodge. And then there are the suicides, dozens upon dozens of them. People leaping from the windows became so common it was barely newsworthy. There were unsolved murders, like the woman nicknamed Pigeon Goldie Osgood, found brutalized in her room in 1960. But no story has captured the modern imagination and chilled the public to the bone, quite like the tragic, inexplicable death of Elisa Lam. In 2013, the 21-year-old Canadian student vanished while staying at the Cecil. The last time she was seen alive was in one of the most disturbing pieces of footage you will ever see. The hotel's elevator camera captured her acting erratically. She steps into the elevator, pressing multiple buttons. When the doors fail to close, she peers out into the hallway, as if looking for someone. She then jumps back into the corner, as if hiding. She creeps out again, looks both ways, and then begins making strange, contorted gestures with her hands, seemingly talking to someone or something that is not there. Finally, she walks away, and the elevator doors, which had been malfunctioning, finally closed. It was the last time anyone saw her. Weeks later, after guests complained about low water pressure and a strange foul taste to the water, maintenance workers made a gruesome discovery. Elisa Lam's naked body was found floating inside one of the sealed water tanks on the hotel's roof. Her death was officially ruled an accidental drowning, but the questions remain. How did she get onto the locked roof? How did she get inside the heavy water tank and close the lid herself? And who, or what, was she talking to in the hallway? The paranormal experiences reported at the Cecil are as aggressive and malevolent as its history. One former guest posted a review online, stating they were awoken by the feeling of hands choking them. Others have seen dark, spectral figures standing at the foot of their beds, a solid black mass of pure dread. Just watch it. The feeling of pure, concentrated despair is so common that many guests check out in the middle of the night, forfeiting their payment, willing to do anything just to get away from the building's oppressive energy. Paranormal researchers have a theory. As one expert put it, the Cecil isn't just haunted by individual spirits, it's a location vortex, a place where so much negative energy, suicide, murder, addiction, pure evil has accumulated that it has become a malevolent entity in itself. It is a building that feeds on despair. Is the Cecil Hotel a gateway to the other side, or is it simply a cursed building that drives the vulnerable to madness and despair? The truth may be far more terrifying. This is not a place that is simply haunted by ghosts. It is a place that creates them. Haunted place number 2, the Whaley House, San Diego. The United States government officially recognizes this building as haunted. Let that sink in. This isn't folklore. It isn't just a local legend. In the 1960s, after investigating the overwhelming claims, the U.S. Commerce Department formally declared the Whaley House to be haunted. But the story of its ghosts begins even before the first brick was laid. Because before it was a home, it was a place of execution, and the dead never left. In the heart of San Diego's historic Old Town stands an elegant, 2-story Greek Revival house. It seems stately, historic, but a sense of profound and crowded sorrow radiates from its walls. The moment you step inside, you feel it. You are not just in a museum. You have walked into someone's private home, and the family is still there. Along with the man they hanged on their front lawn, the property's dark history begins with a man named James Robinson, better known as Yankee Jim, a drifter and a thief. He was convicted of grand larceny in 1852 and sentenced to death. They brought him to this barren patch of land and set up a crude gallows on the back of a wagon, but they miscalculated. Yankee Jim was a tall man. When they kicked the wagon out from under him, his feet scraped the ground, denying him a quick death. He struggled at the end of the rope for nearly an hour, slowly, agonizingly strangling to death in front of a jeering crowd. A few years later, an ambitious entrepreneur named Thomas Whaley bought the cursed property to build a home for his family. He knew what had happened there, but he didn't care. He would live to regret it. Soon after moving in, the Whaleys began to hear it. The sound of heavy, phantom footsteps, like a man walking in heavy boots, stomping through the upstairs halls. Thomas Whaley himself admitted, "I hear him all the time." The first ghost of the Whaley House had made his presence known. But soon, Yankee Jim would have company. A deep and unrelenting tragedy began to plague the Whaley family, as if the land itself was cursed. First, their vibrant, 18-month-old son, Thomas Jr., died a painful death from scarlet fever in an upstairs bedroom. Years later, their beautiful daughter, Violet, married a charming con artist who abandoned her on their honeymoon. Publicly humiliated and spiraling into a deep depression, the 22-year-old Violet walked to a storage shed out back, took her father's .38 caliber pistol, and shot herself in the heart. The house that was meant to be their dream home had become a repository for their deepest grief, and today, all of them are still there. It is America's most crowded haunting. Tour guides and visitors alike will be standing in the parlor and suddenly smell the distinct, powerful scent of Anna Whaley's lavender perfume, as if she has just swept past them. From the empty nursery upstairs, people hear the unmistakable, heartbreaking sound of a baby crying softly. And in the very room that once served as San Diego's courthouse, people see him, a tall, spectral figure, standing near the witness stand, his form translucent, his gaze fixed and hollow. The ghost of Yankee Jim forever observing the proceedings of a justice system that failed him so brutally. The evidence is overwhelming. There is the famous photograph, taken on the stairs, that appears to show the spectral mustachioed figure of Thomas Whaley himself, watching from the landing. EVPs captured within the walls are startlingly clear, revealing not one voice, but many. A man's heavy footsteps, a woman's soft sigh, the faint cry of an infant. Staff report seeing the ghostly apparition of the family's little terrier, Dolly Varden, running down the hall. This is more than a house with a history. It is a home that still belongs to its original tragic occupants. They are not just echoes of the past. They are the true residents, going about their eternal sorrowful lives within these walls. Thomas, the patriarch, still keeps watch over his home. Anna, the grieving mother, still tends to her garden. Violet is forever trapped in her room of despair, and baby Thomas still cries out for his mother. They built it, they died in it, and they have no intention of leaving. When you enter the Whaley house, you are an intruder in their private grief, and the entire spectral family is watching. Haunted place number 1, the RMS Queen Mary, Long Beach. It is a 1,000-foot-long iron tomb, floating in the water, with hundreds of spirits and nearly 50 documented deaths. This is not just the most haunted place in California, it's one of the most haunted places on Earth. There are haunted houses, haunted hotels, haunted bridges, and then there is the Queen Mary, docked permanently in Long Beach. This ship is not a location with a ghost story. It is a city of the dead, a self-contained world of elegant Art Deco ballrooms and claustrophobic, gear-filled boiler rooms, where the echoes of a glamorous past and a terrifying history of warfare and death converge. To step onto its decks is to enter a place where the living are the minority and the past is dangerously, aggressively present. At night, when the fog rolls in from the Pacific and wraps around its massive funnels, the ship transforms. It becomes a silhouette of dread, its portholes like 1,000 vacant eyes. Deep within its hull, far below the waterline, lies the engine room, a sweltering industrial hellscape of steel and steam. This is where in 1966, during a routine drill, an 18-year-old crewman named John Pedder was crushed to death by watertight door number 30. Today, investigators and tour guides who walk through Shaft Alley
where he died, report being touched, shoved, and even scratched by an unseen force. They see his ghost, a young man in overalls, walking the catwalks before vanishing into thin air. He's the most famous ghost of the engine room, but he is far from the only one. The ship has two histories, two souls warring within its iron plate. First, she was the Queen of the Atlantic, a vessel of unimaginable luxury, carrying the rich and famous across the ocean. Then, World War II came. She was stripped of her finery, painted a haunting spectral grey, and reborn as the Grey Ghost. She was now a troop ship, capable of carrying up to 16,000 soldiers at a time, zigzagging across the ocean to outrun Nazi U-boats. The fear and anxiety of those young men, many on their way to their deaths, soaked into the deck. In one of the most horrific incidents of the war, the Grey Ghost, under strict orders, never to stop, collided with one of its escort ships, the HMS Curacoa, slicing it in two, and leaving over 200 British sailors to drown in its wake. To this day, people on the stern of the Queen Mary report hearing the sounds of frantic splashing, of men screaming for help, and the sickening sound of hands pounding against the side of the hull from the icy water below. The spirits of its two lives now wander its decks together. In the first-class swimming pool, an eerie abandoned space, the spirit of a little girl named Jackie, who is said to have drowned there, still wants to play. Visitors hear her giggling, splashing in the empty pool, or asking softly, "Can I play?" Small wet footprints will appear on the dry deck, only to vanish moments later. But this is also the home of something far more sinister. Stateroom B340 is a room so notoriously and violently haunted that the hotel had to strip it bare and seal it off from the public for years. Guests would flee in the middle of the night, reporting bedsheets being ripped off them, faucets turning on by themselves, and a deep guttural growl erupting from the corners of the dark room. The evidence collected on this ship is staggering. The famous EVP of Little Jackie is considered one of an entire class of paranormal recordings. Countless photographs show full-bodied apparitions of women in 1930s attire, soldiers in WWE uniforms, and dark, menacing shadow figures. As one investigator famously said, the Queen Mary is a massive metal container of energy. Every soul, every tragedy, every fear experienced on its decks is amplified and contained within its hull. It's the perfect storm for paranormal activity. It's a giant floating battery for the supernatural. From the elegant lady in white who waltzes alone in the Queen's salon, to the tormented spirits of the engine room, from the playful ghost child of the swimming pool, to the malevolent entity in stateroom B340, the Queen Mary is a vessel teeming with life. It's just not living. It is a world unto itself, a cross-section of a century of ghosts, all trapped together for eternity. To step aboard is to step into their world, a world you may not be invited to leave. Southern California is a land of dreams, but for some it is a land of eternal nightmare. From the heartbroken ghost on a sun-drenched seaside balcony, to the angry spirits under a city street, from the violent echo in a millionaire's mansion, to the legions of the dead, trapped within a floating iron tomb. These 15 locations are living testaments to the fact that some stories never end. They are more than just memories. They are energies, imprinted on the very fabric of a place. They are etched into the walls by tragedy, soaked into the ground by bloodshed, and carried on the cold night air in whispers of warning and cries of eternal pain. Are these merely folklore campfire tales to spook the tourist, or are they stark, chilling warnings, proof that there are some doors that should never be opened, and some places where the dead hold dominion over the living? What do you think? Which of these 15 locations chilled you to the bone? Was it the psychological terror of Suicide Bridge, the heartbreaking tragedy of the Mission, or the pure, unfiltered evil of the Cecil Hotel? Let us know in the comments below. Have you ever had an experience at one of these locations, or is there a haunted place in Southern California that we missed? A place with a story that demands to be told. Share it with us. Your story could be featured in a future investigation. If you found yourself looking over your shoulder during this countdown, if you felt that chill crawl up your spine, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more descents into the darkness, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an encounter. Until next time, stay safe, and don't wander off the path.